BYU now, and really, I'll say arguably, but I don't know if there's much of an argument against her being the greatest high school female runner of all time. I was there at the Brian Clay Invitational in Azusa Pacific earlier this year, where she ran 14:57 on the track in that 5K. One of the most incredible things I've ever seen on a track. So she was the victor here last year. We might not see such a dominant performance, but hey, right behind her was somebody who is here. Libby Dowdy finished second in 17 flat last year, back and forth with Isabella Keller, who we have here as well, the Illinois state champ, over 3,200 meters the last couple of years as well.
Yeah, and I think those two are set up to have a dynamic race. Libby Dowdy comes in undefeated. She's raced Isabella before. I'm curious to see the dynamic between these two. Do they do that little awkward, hey, we're going to look at each other before we make a decision, or is one of them going to say, today's my day and I'm going for it? We have such a long straight, and we've been mentioning it to death all night. But I think there could be a little bit of gamesmanship about who gets that inside line, who gets to the hill first, and who gets to kind of dominate the race.
That's what's so fun about these big invitationals here as we take a look at these teams lining up, is it really brings the best of the regions all together here. Libby Dowdy, multiple-time state champion here in Indiana. You mentioned probably her main competitor here, Isabella Keller, also Illinois state champ. And just a youngster is Keller. She was undefeated going back into her 8th grade year, looking at her stats, undefeated throughout 8th grade on the track, and 4th here a year ago, as we said, in 17:15. So, conditions are good. We've seen some good, solid times across multiple races. I expect the same here, and I just get the feeling, even if there is some gamesmanship, Ben, I think that those two, and maybe one or two that might try to hang on to the leaders, but I just think that they know coming in, hey, we're the class of the field, and we want to improve upon the 2nd and 4th places that we had a year ago. I think that those two, and perhaps a couple more, will go out to the lead early.
Yeah, I agree. I'm curious to see how it shakes out, though. That's why we run these races.
I like to say, the favorites on paper, but they don't run the race on paper.
The anticipation is mounting.
So Isabella Keller representing for Illinois, Libby Dowdy for Indiana, of Effingham and Indian Creek respectively. And Libby Dowdy hasn't really raced a ton this year. By my count here, just that Brownsburg invite earlier in September and 17:04 and 16:49 a year ago at that same race. So that is her all-time personal best. First time she dipped under 17 minutes. So anything under 17 minutes certainly will be impressive. We'll keep an eye on that all-time top 10 list as well. 16:31, the meet record here, set back in 2023, the course record, I should say, by Rachel Forsyth. And that 17 flat from Libby Dowdy was a top 15 high school time all-time here as well. So, they already, Isabella Keller was top 20 also with her 17:06 that came 2 years ago as just a freshman. So these two know the course. They've raced each other. They've raced on this really well-known course. And like I said, that top spot kind of up for grabs now in the absence of someone like Jane Hedengren, who took last year's victory.
Yeah, this one's a little bit open, though, in terms of kind of the 2 or 3, 4, 5. I don't think we have a clear favorite for those, but I am curious to see how these two respond to each other.
Well, we've seen so many great races already, and the spectacle of being underneath the lights. And if you're just joining us for these championship races, hopefully you were with us for that boys race that was such a barn burner at the finish. And tuning in here under the lights, such a special, unique thing at this Twilight meet, living up to, of course, the Twilight name, certainly, but getting to run under dark skies we don't always see here in the cross-country side of things, usually in the morning and midday, but under the lights here in Terre Haute on this famous course. Coming on down the hill here before making that turn, and we've seen it time and again throughout the weekend where this is really where the top couple athletes start to pull away and string out, and we're already seeing more separation or more settling in than we saw on the boys' side.
Yeah, I kind of had a feeling this could happen, where sometimes you get these top competitors and they're just a little bit hesitant to show their cards right away. They're a little bit more willing to let some of the other athletes take a little bit of the lead, kind of dictate the race a little bit before they show their cards. And I think that's kind of why we see a little bit bigger pack than we expected up front.
Well, Libby Dowdy has won just about every award there is to win in Indiana. Gatorade Player of the Year for cross country, and numerous state titles, state records. And, you know, we look at the national scene sometimes, but if you really pay attention, you kind of get a chance to see, as I like to say, the stars of tomorrow today. And if you're a fan of collegiate cross country and track and field, this gives you a little bit of insight into the next couple of years. So much team running that we see at the NCAA level. This Terre Haute course has played host, of course, to national championships, pre-nats, and things like that going years and years back. So this is a familiar course, and one that we really kind of can compare a little bit apples to apples, if you will, looking at some of those collegiate races and the high school races over the years. But just a couple minutes into this one, and here's our leader.
Yeah, and you see Isabella back there kind of responding. Her eyes are up, just kind of seeing what's shaking out in terms of the lead. She seems like she's going to take a little bit more of a soft approach to this one and kind of feel it out as we get through the first mile.
So no surprise to see Libby Dowdy out in front there. She knows that she's one of the favorites and has finished second here, which she did a year ago. And I do think we have to talk about the times. As I said, 17 flat was one of the fastest times we've seen on this course, behind the all-time run from Jane Hedengren. But Dowdy, you have to come into this race, I think, with a lot of confidence. And for that chase pack, especially Keller back there, I think you can't let this gap get too big. This isn't somebody unknown or somebody who's maybe catching a flyer in the first half mile or even full mile of this race. This is somebody who knows the course, who's very confident and has the chops to continue to lay it on. You really can't let that rubber band get stretched too thin, as we like to say, as Dowdy leads the way coming up this first hill.
Yeah, and I think you see Isabella kind of responding to that right now. She's kind of coming down this hill with a little bit more emphasis, kind of closing that gap, and probably will slot right in behind and kind of see how this one plays out.
So Keller now, the junior from St. Anthony, taking the bull by the horns here as she's trying to reel in Julia.
So you can see the easily identifiable pink jersey there and the red behind her of Keller. Diminutive figure, but a big presence on the cross-country course here. And those two, as expected, starting to pull away.
Yeah, she's running with a ton of confidence tonight, going out and kind of commanding the lead. But I think she's running well within herself. She doesn't look overextended, doesn't look like she's pressing, just looks like she's running with confidence.
Keller, part of such a great running family. Father Chuck had such a passion for running, was a great high school runner in his own right. Anna Sophia Keller, her sister, ran at Notre Dame and had a great Effingham career as well. So following in some great footsteps is Isabella Keller and making her own name certainly over her young career.
Yeah, and she's slowly extending this lead by a little bit. I don't think this is a decisive move, but that gap just hasn't been closed yet. And I'd like to see Isabella Keller kind of close that gap a little bit with Libby Dowdy here.
Oh, Keller riding that inside line, and again, somebody that's so experienced, now a junior, but she has been running for so long. She was undefeated through much of the season last year as just a 10th grader, was 4th in that race, as we said, in 2024, and was 3rd the year before that as just a freshman. So look at the gap, not an insurmountable lead just yet for Dowdy, but I think both of these athletes know that this is the year for them. And Dowdy making a very concerted effort, let's say, through the first mile plus of this race.
Yeah, and Isabella Keller comes in with the faster of the 2 times. She ran 16:46 this year. And I just wonder if Libby Dowdy is coming in and saying, you know what, I still have 1 or 2 cards to play, and I know I'm fit. I like the gamesmanship, but I also like the idea of just coming out and making that big, bold statement.
Also wrestled in the winter. This became an IHSAA sanctioned sport. And right now, the senior showing that fight as she's approaching the halfway mark.
So here we come up on just about the halfway mark. Keep an eye on the time, and we'll keep an eye on that 2-mile mark as well. Like I said, when you have that confidence, this, race, I have to think that as much as we look towards the postseason, a lot of these regular season meets still matter, Ben. I mean, there's just something about coming back to the same course time and again, and maybe climbing the ranks ever so slightly year after year, finishing runner-up a year ago as Dowdy did. And talk about being a well-rounded athlete. She's kind of done it all, and like I said, won just about every award there is to win on the track and the cross-country side of things. So really, really impressive running so far from Dowdy, but Keller right there still.
Yeah, just kind of a haunting figure in the back. Hasn't shaken her off yet. That gap hasn't grown too much. And I almost wonder if it's a strategy of, hey, I'm going to be out of sight, out of mind, but I'm going to loom like a nightmare this entire 5K until I make my move.
Well, and Dowdy, so often when we see some of these top athletes, we talk about being well-rounded, but, if we're being honest, a lot of times when you start to get to that elite level, even at the high school level, you're so focused on your sport. Libby Dowdy, let's give her credit. She wrestles at her high school as well, a recently sanctioned state championship sport there in Indiana, so kind of cool to see that combination as well. Talk about strength and agility and all the things that go into wrestling, and the endurance, of course, as well. But the strength is showing here for Libby Dowdy.
Yeah, strength and athleticism. Like a young Kellen Taylor. Kind of does everything. Strong. But that gap is slowly being closed here. I think there's a little gamesmanship going on.
Keller certainly not out of it yet, but as we've said time and again, you see the athletic course tracker there, and the meters just start to get ticked off more and more, and with every step, you just run out of real estate to close that gap.
Yeah, we have a good race on our hands here. I like this approach by Isabella Keller. It's cat and mouse, but you're just not revealing any of your cards. I think there's going to be a hard charge to the lead, one that closes that door and kind of answers the question for Libby Dowdy. She's been here the whole time.
You've got sub 5
Keller, though, not quite shaken yet. And as we see them come through here, we'll get this 2-mile split very shortly, but that gap closing ever so slightly. Keller right behind her, and it seems like if Keller's going to make a push, now is the time as they turn this next corner. You see that final hill, not the biggest one, but it's time to make a long push for home. If you're Isabella Keller, certainly Dowdy has led since the beginning in that pink jersey there. These are the two we figured would be duking it out, coming in our favorites, second and fourth a year ago. One of them will leave most likely as the champion here. They're well clear of the field, but look at the fans absolutely loving it. Been waiting all day long, as we all have, for this battle. We saw a great duel. Well, more than a duel, I suppose, on the boys' side of things, but now it is mano a mano as these two come through running step for step.
Step for step, and neither one has really changed their pace. Dowdy has a lot of confidence in the way she's leading. She hasn't really responded. Sometimes when an athlete starts closing that gap, comes up on your shoulder, you want to make kind of a push. You want to change pace just so you let them know that you still have running left. But she's been super confident this last 100 meters. And I just wonder if that's shaken Keller by just not responding and saying, hey, I'm still in charge here.
Both athletes so strong and on the track and on the cross-country courses as well, of course. Isabella Keller, like we said, had a great freshman year, was third, was fourth a year ago, and would be such an impressive feat if she was able to turn that into victory here. But Isabella Keller, is this the move? Is this the one that will bring her victory and break Libby Dowdy, who was second a year ago and currently sits in second here with 13 minutes and 30 seconds clicked off of that clock? I like what you said. It's been a very consistent effort, really, for both of these athletes, but you could kind of tell that urgency from Libby Dowdy. It seemed like she felt like she maybe needed to build up a bit of a lead, whereas Keller has just been stomping through here and making a move now. This might be decisive.
Yeah, that was a decisive move as we got up that hill. But is it early? There's still a little bit of running left, and she hasn't quite shaken off Dowdy. But I am concerned that there wasn't really a response. And as you can see, as we start going down this hill here, you would want to see that gap being closed. But I think this is going to be Keller all the way to the finish.
Well, convert it however you like on some of these 3-mile courses. You know, we see different distances often throughout cross country. A lot of 5Ks, of course. That's what Libby Dowdy's run, 17:04 earlier in the season in her lone race of this fall cross country season. And she may still kind of be racing herself into shape, if we're being honest, with an eye towards the postseason. She seems to be in good form, certainly, but Keller with a few more races under her belt and a couple of 3-mile races, including a 5K as well, or an addition of 5K, I should say, but 3 races undefeated so far this season for Effingham's Isabella Keller.
And we know this is not the last time these two will face off against each other.
A budding rivalry, certainly, even going back to last year as they faced off and finished, as we've said, second and fourth. But they're flipping the script now, or Keller is, I suppose, in the red here for Effingham. St. Anthony out of Illinois. Few hundred meters remaining, and I think this gap is going to do it. But watch that clock. This is going to be very, very quick, and we'll look to that all-time list. Remember, 17:15 she ran to get fourth a year ago. 17 flat was Libby Dowdy in second, but they are moving very, very quickly, just coming up on 16 minutes here.
Yeah, this is a super impressive performance. She lurked in the weeds there for the first 3K and then made her presence known as we got up that hill. Quick peek over her shoulder.
And finding just another gear here, as you said, one more peak back there, but keep an eye on that clock. Course record for high schooler, 16:31. She looks like she'll be just outside of that, but Isabella Keller is not letting off the gas. Libby Dowdy has not let her do that, as Dowdy was our early leader. Keller came on through. They will both look to be under 17 minutes here, which is a very, very impressive feat. Something that just a dozen or so athletes have done in the high school ranks here. And look at Isabella Keller coming up from fourth a year ago. Yes, raise your hands in victory, young lady. You have done it. An improvement. Top 3, top 4 she's been before, but now she stands alone atop the podium as Isabella Keller takes victory here in a great duel with Libby Dowdy. Both of them incredible times coming through sub 17, as Keller is credited with a 16:53, Libby Dowdy 16:55. What a run from those two.
Phenomenal run by those two.
Great run for 15:30. Then you've got the duo from St. Ignatius. That's Anika Swan.
And by my count, that's a top 10 time all-time for Keller. And Dowdy improves her standing, stays in top 12 or so also, as she becomes one of the few athletes, as I said, to go under 17 minutes all-time on this Laverne Gibson course. You've said it time and again, Ben, it is a tough course, and getting to know it, running it multiple times year after year, that helps, but you still have to go out there and do the work. I think we'll see much, much more from Libby Dowdy throughout the season. Lightly raced so far. This certainly is a big race in the regular season, but they both have their eyes on the postseason. Those are names we'll be hearing much more.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think there's a lot to be learned from that professional college ranks where you kind of race yourself into shape as you kind of eye those later seasons. Yes, it is October, it is early October, and as you kind of look towards those Nike Nationals, you're still 8 weeks away, and you might still be in this big build, this big time period of work where you're still doing a lot of mileage, you're still doing a couple workouts a week, maybe you're still doing a long run, and you're coming into this race probably not as fresh as you potentially could be.
Coming into this race, Libby Dowdy was rated number 30 in the nation. Isabella Keller was on the watch list, if you will, just outside that top 30. Boy, that may put her onto the list. She'll be a name to remember throughout the rest of the season as we see our start here. And early on, we saw that pink jersey of Libby Dowdy, and we were even starting to question, Ben, hey, is Keller going to get dropped? Is Dowdy just laying it on too thick, too early? You can see Keller, though, back a few spaces. Talk about patience. She ran that race perfectly.
Yes, she did. I think she was just kind of waiting to see how it was all going to unfold. There's an idea of racing where you just sit back, watch, kind of intake the information. It shows a lot of maturity, and then you kind of just allow the race to unfold in front of you before you make your presence known.
That was a great shot there that Dowdy had built up, but credit to the maturity and the experience of Isabella Keller coming through, not panicking by any means, didn't have to turn on any crazy jet boosters in the middle of the race, just slowly pushed on the gas, came through, and finishes with a big, big win. Takes down a solid field, including Dowdy, who finishes second here for the second year in a row. And that is nothing to hang your head on by any means. A good duel there, and we are treated to another great race. Boy, both championship races really lived up to top billing here at the Nike XC Town Twilight. Worth the wait, certainly under the lights as the finishers continue to trickle in. But you can tell the fans there, every fan and athlete that raced earlier and coach and parent and spectator waited it out, and they were rewarded with a couple incredible races.
Yeah, we had great races on the championship side all along down the program tonight. We had some good races, but these two really lived up to their name. I mean, Isabella and Libby kind of showed up and delivered such a great race. And then on the boys' side, we had that big pack almost all the way to the turn with 400 meters to go. And then it was Paul who really took off with 300, 200 meters to go.
And then Chicago's top-ranked team, Ignatius.
And let's shout out Carmel here on the team side of things. A dominant victory as they come through, putting 3 in the top 8. And that was just too much for anybody to overcome. They finish up 36th and 49th for their 4 and 5 runners. And, of course, that shakes out a little differently when you take out all of the individuals, etc. So that score is representative of that. We'll get a final tally. But what is not in question is the victory here for Carmel. Mount Prospect looks to finish second with Bloomington South closely behind them. And what a team showing there for Carmel in our final race of the evening. So much fun out in front also. And again, it's really rewarding to watch these races throughout the regular season because, you know, the headlines, we talk about the postseason, the regional meets, and, you know, NXN and various national caliber meets. But when you've seen these athletes go head-to-head, you just know the history and you know the rivalry that has built up over the weeks and months and years. And I just think it adds even more gravitas when they toe the line at a national meet.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And having that backstory, watching these two duke it out here, what they learn from each other and what they bring to training the next few weeks will only intensify about how they show up next to race each other.